Hello, dear fellow human. This is an article I published on my Substack recently. It's part of my Dharma Driver series. It starts with a documentary about Yahya Sinwar. Moves through Gaza and Iran and lands somehow, with my granddaughter screaming in her car seat. It's about rage, compassion, and the long struggle to come to peace with choosing the inward journey over the barricades. It's called The City of Saba, and it's about the only medicine I seem to have. Somewhere in Portland tonight, a driver will pick up a stranger. He will not know their story, their God, their grief, their trauma, or their certainty, the whole inherited world they carry in their body without knowing it. He will try just for that one ride to see them clearly in their wholeness. I recently watched a documentary about Yahya Sinwar. He was a Palestinian and the architect of the October 7th attack. He spent 21 years in Israeli prisons. He learned fluent Hebrew. He studied history, Jewish history, Palestinian history, world history. He became, by any measure, an educated man. And then they released him, and he led Hamas. In the documentary, he had said something that stopped me. He said, "God gave this land to my people. Therefore, it is our right, even our responsibility, to drive the Israelis out." I sat for a long time with that. I'd recently read a statistic that a majority of Israelis believe it would be acceptable and even desirable to drive the Palestinians from Gaza entirely. Not to integrate, not to negotiate, not to share, but to get rid of them. Two people, two tribes, one God, the same claim. And then a third. I learned that there are more evangelical Christians in America who want Israel to control everything from the river to the sea than there are Israelis. Not because it's their land, not because their families have lived here for generations, but because they believe that when Israel controls the entire region, Christ will return. The second coming depends upon it. And so the missiles and the displaced families and the children under rubble become, in this theology, not tragedy, but necessity, the birth pangs of salvation. Three groups, three versions of the same God, all converging on the same ground. This is how it happens among us humans. Unquestioned belief in being chosen by God, tribal affiliation experienced as truth, an extraordinary capacity to strip other human beings of their humanity in order to pursue what we are certain is our special destiny. Now American warships are in the Persian Gulf. The bombs falling on Iran are not accidental. They're the fruit of this same tree. Leaders who have learned to ride belief like a wave, who have discovered that a population certain of God's favor can be moved to do almost anything. The men at the top did not create this. They inherited it, recognized it, and used it. I have struggled for years with the fact that this is not unusual. This is not a Middle Eastern pathology or an American one. This is the ancient story that our species lives out. The creatures in the next valley, the ones with different colored skin, those who eat what we do not and pray as we do not, they're not quite fully human. It is possible, even righteous, to kill them. In American history, black people were legally worth 3/5 of a person. The arithmetic of dehumanization is always precise. Millions of indigenous people in North America were killed in the trance of manifest destiny. I see clearly what's happening in Gaza. I will not soften it. And I have been torn for decades between the call of activism and the call of turning inward. I've hung sheets with sayings on them from freeway overpasses. I've marched, I've signed, and I've shared, and I've argued. And I have watched people I respect, people like Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur, who speaks with moral clarity and at great personal cost. I've watched them do the work of public witness that the moment demands. I want them to succeed. I'm glad they exist. And I know that is not my calling. Not because I don't see, not because I don't feel, but because each person responds to injustice through their own particular nature, their own conditioning, their own lens. Some people are built for the barricades. Some are called to inner work. The question is not which response is more virtuous. The question is which response is actually mine. But I want to say something about the Jews before I go further, because this piece could be misunderstood as an indictment, and that is not what lives in my heart. The Jewish people carry one of the longest and most documented histories of persecution in human history. The pogroms, the Inquisition, the death camps, centuries of being the despised other. Scapegoated, expelled, slaughtered in country after country, generation after generation. That history is not abstract. It lives in the nervous system. It gets passed forward in the body, in the theology, in the story a people tells about who they are, and what the world will do to them if they are not vigilant. Nobody chose that inheritance. The almost unbearable irony is that the people who were history's most documented victims of dehumanization have in this moment become its agents. Not because Jews are uniquely capable of this darkness, because humans are, because what is done to a people across centuries enters the blood and the mythology and gets carried forward into the next chapter, sometimes as wisdom, sometimes as wound, sometimes as the very thing that was done to them. I hold that with grief. I hold this with grief, not judgment, grief. And then last week I spent an afternoon with my granddaughter. She's nearly 3 and has become, in the way of nearly 3-year-olds, somewhat of a tyrant. I wanted to take her to a children's play place. She resisted every step. Eventually I got her to the car, but she would not get into her car seat. I waited. I counted down from 10. She got in, and as I buckled her up, she raged, screaming, kicking, her fury coming through my hearing aids like something physical. I ended up carrying her screaming into the house. By the time she was yelling for her bed, her anger had become my anger. Reactive, tight. Judgmental of myself for not remaining calm. She slept for 2 hours. The afternoon, in me, was colored by the emotion. Here's what I want to say about that afternoon. After 55 years of meditation practice, after decades of therapy and teaching and sitting and inquiry, a raging toddler could reach inside my gut and pull out feelings I thought I had long since metabolized. The primitive emotional brain does not care how many years you've sat on a cushion. When powerlessness meets frustration, the body responds. Mine did. It surprised me. It humbled me again. And it taught me something I needed to know. If I, with all that practice, all of that privilege, all of that relative safety, can be stabilized by a child I love over a car seat, what are we asking of people whose nervous systems have been marinated in intergenerational trauma? What does rage feel like in a body that has watched its family members killed, its land taken, its children bombed? What does it feel like in the body that carries the memory of the camps, the cattle cars, the ovens? Rage is not a character flaw. It is what happens when powerlessness meets the unbearable. And it lives in all of us, right under the surface, much closer than we think. Nobody chose their womb. Nobody chose the family they were born into, the theology they were handed before they could speak, the history that shaped what feels like truth and what feels like threat. The settler did not choose to be raised believing God gave him that land. The fighter in Gaza did not choose the refugee camp she was born into. The Jewish mother did not choose the mother who survived the camps and passed that terror forward in her touch. My granddaughter did not choose to be 2.5. And I did not choose the conditioning that makes turning inward feel more true to me than taking to the streets. I am still torn, but the tearing is at a more subtle level now. What I am no longer torn about is this: hating anyone is rooted in delusion. So is the belief in my people and your people. These are the delusions we are here to awaken from. There's only one people here on the earth, not my people, not yours. One people, the settler and the refugee, the grandmother who survived the camps and the grandmother who watched her home become rubble. My granddaughter raging in her car seat, the driver circling Portland late in the evening. One people, dreaming, most of us, that we are separate. I remember in my teens and 20s believing that our generation was going to be the one to stop war and hunger. Joan Baez was going to lead us in song, and our love would triumph. The wheel of life had other plans. Rumi wrote about the city of Saba, a place with such abundance that no one had to do anything. Grape clusters hung in the streets and brushed the faces of the citizens. Dogs grew fat on scraps. The lean desert wolf got indigestion from the rich food. And no one wondered about the unseen world. This over-richness is a subtle disease. Those who have it are blind to what's wrong and deaf to anyone who points it out. The city of Saba cannot be understood from within itself. But there is a cure, an individual medicine, not a social remedy. Sit quietly and listen. Listen for a voice within that will say, be more silent. As that happens, your soul starts to revive. Give up talking in your positions of power. Give up the excessive money. Turn toward the teachers and prophets who don't live in Saba. They can help you grow sweet again and fragrant and wild and fresh and thankful for any small event. I am more and more turning inward, and something is happening that I cannot fully name. Understanding arriving differently, a kind of sweetness returning that I had not noticed leaving. This is not indifference. This is not looking away. My agitation and activity does not reach the Persian Gulf. It does not reach Sudan. It does not reach the families whose homes have become rubble in service of someone else's theology. But the work I do reaches the person sitting across from me. It reaches the stranger in my car. It reaches the student learning for the first time to sit still and watch the breath. It reaches my granddaughter who will inherit whatever world we are making and who deserves a grandfather who has done his own work. One of the things I have been given to do, the thing that actually fits my hands, is to help people bring love into their activism, to sit with someone who is raging at the oppressor and help them to see a human being. Not to extinguish the fire, to help them carry it without being consumed by it. That is not nothing. That may be the hardest thing. The most radical act available to me is to become a person capable of love in more and more challenging circumstances. Not as an escape from the world, as a preparation for it. The world will do what the world does. Tribes will defend their God-given ground. Leaders will learn to ride belief, emotion, and hatred like a wave. Children will rage against restraint. And the wheel will turn, as it has always turned, on every continent, in every century, in every family. That is the medicine Rumi was pointing at. Individual, not social. It may be the only medicine I have, and I am beginning to believe it is essential. I've taught Buddhism and meditation for more than 50 years, and I offer individual consultations, meditation instruction, and ongoing groups for those ready to begin. To go further, look for me at www.robertbeatty.com or on Substack. Look for Dharma Driver. Thank you for listening. I hope this is very helpful in your life. Goodbye.